Yeah, I mean, I thought it was pretty cowardly, kind of pretty bush league, which, you know, there's plenty of tape out there to watch. I haven't seen it replay, but yes, I really haven't seen anything like that yet.
All right, it was a wild night in Cleveland for Thursday Night Football, the Steelers and Browns' first primetime game since 2011. Welcome to a special Friday edition of the Steelers Roundtable. I'm Missi Matthews, joined today by Charlie Batch, former Steelers quarterback. A lot of questions for you, Charlie. Also, Bob Labriola is on hand as well. He was in Cleveland last night. And to finish out our panel, outside linebacker Arthur Moats is here. So, guys, the Steelers lost to the Browns 21-7. They are now 5-5. The league has handed out some fines. The ending of the game, I don't think what anybody wants in the game of football. So there is a lot to go over. So first, we're going to start with the NFL and what they have announced today, taking swift action of announcing this. Both the Steelers and the Browns organizations have been fined each $250,000. Here you see the list of suspensions. Cleveland's Myles Garrett is suspended without pay indefinitely at a minimum for the remainder of the regular season and postseason. He must also meet with the commissioner's office prior to a decision being made on his reinstatement to the league. Marquise Pouncey has been suspended without pay for 3 games and fined an additional amount for fighting. And also we have Larry Ojejobi. He has been suspended, 1 game, also facing fines. The league saying that all of these can be appealed and also leaving the door open for other discipline for other players. So we will have to stay tuned for that. Also today, Steelers president Art Rooney II released this statement saying, quote, "As an organization, we are disappointed with what occurred last night near the end of our game against the Cleveland Browns. The actions of the players involved were not something that should be part of any football game. Our players, coaches, and everyone in the Steelers organization understands that we must always maintain composure no matter what happens. After a hard-fought game between 2 rivals, it is a shame that the game ended that way." All right, guys. So with all of that being said, Charlie, I want to start with you. You obviously know exactly what happened, what went wrong in this game. It didn't just start in that final 8 seconds. This was a chippy game.
It really was. And then you're talking about a division game at this point. And when you can't get the running game going, you're not converting on third downs, those type of things are frustrating from that perspective. But also playing a short week Thursday night game is very tough. And it just was frustrating all around when you watch it. Things just weren't going right offensively. And that led to kind of what you saw at the end of that ball game. And it was just unfortunate to see.
Arthur, your thoughts on especially the hit on Mason Rudolph with his own helmet?
Yeah, man. As a defender, you first off never want to see that type of violence. You understand that in the heat of the moment, you're not. It's hard to say what you're gonna do in terms of how you're gonna react and things like that. But under no circumstances should you ever swing a person's helmet at another guy, especially with them not having a helmet on. On top of that, that's just dangerous in terms of really hurting somebody, and that's not what you play this game for.
Labs, your thoughts? You were there. You wrote a column on it today as well.
Yeah, you know, I think that in a lot of these instances, and, you know, we saw it in 1976, the criminal element game when George Atkinson clotheslined Lynn Swann from behind. That was the opener. Steelers Raiders in Oakland, the opener. Then later that year, Steelers Raiders played in the AFC Championship game. It would have been the third. It was the 3rd straight season that those 2 teams met in the AFC Championship. Chuck Noll had called Atkinson and Jack Tatum part of a criminal element. There was a lot of bad blood. The best referee in the NFL at that time, his name was Tommy Bell, and Tommy Bell was contacted by Pete Rozelle, and Pete Rozelle told him, "You're the best referee we have. You have a choice. You can either do the Super Bowl or the AFC Championship game." He took the AFC Championship game. Now, he took control of that game right away, and there were no shenanigans. The Raiders won the game. It certainly didn't end up the way Steelers fans wanted to, with a potential three-peat, but there was none of that kind of extracurricular garbage going on. And I thought last night that Clete Blakeman could have done a better job of getting control of that game early. There was no flag when Juju Smith-Schuster got taken out with a helmet-to-helmet hit. And I also thought, if you look at that last play, Mason Rudolph gets rid of the ball, Myles Garrett tackles him, puts him on the ground, and is on top of him. throw the flag right there, roughing the passer. And I don't know that any of this other stuff happens. See, there it is right there. He takes him down, kind of puts him on his back, and then he rolls over on top of him. There's Clete Blakeman right there. That's his job. That flag came out way too late. If he threw that flag right away, I think that Mason Rudolph's combativeness maybe is muted a little bit because he knows he's getting a penalty. See, the flag should have been out right there. And maybe some of the, joining in and all that other stuff doesn't happen either because all of those players see that the situation is being handled by the on-field referee. So, sometimes it can be handled by the Zebras right on site.
I also should say that Mason Rudolph had his normal post-game press conference and said that he felt fine. So even I know how bad it looked. I'm not sure how he's feeling today, but he did say that he wasn't feeling any ill effects from it. But this is a guy who was just concussed not too many weeks ago.
Looking at that, of course, we don't want to see it, but the way that the offensive lineman defended Mason Rudolph, that lets me know that they believe in what he's bringing to the table. He is the leader of this offense, and those guys were there to defend him. And it's just unfortunate that when you see what happened with Marquise Pouncey, that 3 games, he's defending his guy. And at that point, hopefully on an appeal process, maybe that is reduced. But it's an unfortunate situation all along.
Well, you touch on something there when you talk about those guys standing up for their quarterback. As a teammate of any player, you always stand up for them in those type of situations. Because if not, you don't have that same type of closeness, that same type of brotherhood going forward. So I think it was important that even though it's going to be consequences and you never want to see people react with violence, you still have to do something to stand up for your brother, and that's what they did.
And he's earned a ton of respect, not that he didn't have it already,
right?
But throughout the league and national media-wise, he earned a ton of respect by defending his quarterback.
Absolutely.
All right, we do have a lot more to talk about here on the Steelers Roundtable. We will be right back to break down what went wrong with the Steelers offense and what made Baker Mayfield so successful.
Marquise, should Garrett be done for the year?
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. We'll see how serious the NFL is about their players.
Do you expect anything to happen to you?
I mean, at this point, who cares? My man got hit in the head with a helmet. I mean, I'll accept whatever penalty it is.
Hey, this is sport of game.
Still up by 3.
Oh, man, nice.
It's realistic.
Dude, Franco's a legend. Oh! Whoa.
Hey, did you know you can watch highlights on the new Steelers app?
Wow, that's cool.
Download the Steelers official mobile app today and never miss out on any of the action, highlights, live video and audio, and much more.
Bless you.
Welcome back to the Steelers Roundtable, everybody. It was not a good ending for multiple reasons for the Pittsburgh Steelers in Cleveland. On Thursday night, we are back to talk about the Steelers offense and what went wrong. Charlie, I want to start with you on this one. It just seemed like they couldn't get things going. Yes, a number of players, key makers, Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson, James Conner, were not able to finish the game. But what, in your eyes, was the biggest factor last night?
Well, not being able to get the running game going. That was something that you would hope would come back with James Conner inserted back into that lineup. He was injured early, and it just, the flow, ebb and flow of this game was off. Critical third down situations, backs were missing, their blitz pickup, incomplete passes that were going on. And when you don't convert on third down, guess what? You're not going to get many more first down opportunities, and those type of things contributed into becoming one-dimensional. And of course, as you lose players throughout the course of the game, it alters the game plan.
For sure.
Randy Fichtner is sitting there saying, I can't go to this personnel group because I don't have enough guys. Because the receivers who were playing in that game, remember, they were playing special teams also. So these guys were getting worn down as the game went on.
Yeah, they were down to James Washington, Johnny Holden, and Tevin Jones, who was just promoted before the game.
Right. And that's something that you just don't know what you have. And it's unfortunate in that situation as a play caller that now not have your personnel groups.
Arthur, what do you add to that?
Well, I was going to say, you talk about the receivers playing special teams. The running backs were as well. When you look at Jalen Samuels and Trey Edmonds, they were covering punts. And the biggest thing, like you said, man, when you don't establish that running game early and consistently, you have Mason throwing the ball over 40 times. He's a young quarterback still learning and still growing in this league. To ask him to do that on the road on a short week and expect him to be successful, I mean, it's setting them up for failure right there. And like you said, it's a direct correlation to the lack of running game, and that's something that they need to address going forward because it's not going to get easier. And they're still going to have issues potentially at receiver with the injuries that Deontay Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster sustained. So that's going to be something that they're going to have to figure out soon.
Labs, in terms of heading into this game, we knew it was a short week. Randy Fiechner said it. Mason Rudolph said it. Take care of the football, and that is not what happened last night.
Yeah, I mean, really, what we had not seen from Mason Rudolph to this point in all of his starts was turning the ball over. You know, one of the things that can kill a team's chances, and a quarterback, because he has the ball in his hand all the time, really is at the center of this in my mind. If a quarterback is turning the ball over, the team really is put in an extremely difficult position. And Mason Rudolph threw 4 interceptions. I don't know that, you know, and there really weren't any of them that you could say, well, that was a good throw or that was a good decision. And we really hadn't seen that kind of play from Mason Rudolph to this point. And so I really think that put them behind the 8 ball as well, in addition to what you mentioned, Charlie, the inability to get the running game going. So you were kind of one-dimensional. You're one-dimensional with receivers that, you know, pretty down on the depth chart.
Right. It looked like a preseason game.
Right, looked like a preseason game. And the Browns cornerbacks, you know, Denzel Ward and Greedy Williams, they're not chopped liver. And so, you know, their ability to line up and match up on the Steelers receivers down on the depth chart really allowed the safeties and the linebackers to roam around a lot. Joe Schobert, I mean, seriously, he's a nice linebacker and everything, but 2 interceptions, I mean, that's really not the kind of game you expect from him.
When you look back, these are growing pains that we'll continue to see from Mason Rudolph. Remember, the last time he really was tested on the road was in September against the 49ers. He did not make that Chargers game. Devlin Hodges started that game. He came back. Home games, it's a lot easier to do it there, but now when you get tested on the road, faced with a little adversity there, we're going to now see what he's capable of doing. And unfortunately, yesterday was just not his day.
And when you go into that game, if you're Mason Rudolph, you're thinking, well, I got Juju to depend on and Deontay Johnson. Okay, I'm good. I'm good with those guys. And they were both out before the end of the 3rd quarter. And so
don't forget James Conner as well when you're going in
right,
there. You're anticipating, oh, the running game is going to be a lot better this week because I have him back.
All right, we do have to talk about the Steelers' defense. They did not allow the Rams to score any points offensively the week prior. Here's Coach Tomlin talking about Baker Mayfield after the game.
Defensively, you know, I think Mayfield did some positive things on extended plays, and that was probably the difference on that side of the ball. We didn't keep him in the pocket enough on kind of extended plays. He created some things, and we weren't strong enough on the back end in combination with the rush in terms of keeping him in, and so he made a few plays that we weren't able to overcome.
All right, Arthur, I want to start with you. Since we're talking Steelers defense, it just seemed to be so different from what we saw what they were able to do against the Rams.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we saw this week was the lack of splash plays, the forced fumbles, the interceptions, and what Coach Tomlin hit on in terms of extending plays by Baker Mayfield. It was times where the Steelers had pressure on him, but they just didn't capitalize on the sacks, and ultimately that put the coverage in a bind. You're typically used to covering 3, 4, 5 seconds. When you got to cover 6, 7, 8, that's asking a lot from these guys from a defensive standpoint. When these are NFL caliber wide receivers and Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, that's top level talent. So when you're asking these guys to cover for that long, you have to make those plays. And I think that was the biggest difference this week compared to weeks that we've seen in the past from this defense.
And when you look to see where we talk about those splash plays, Minka Fitzpatrick, since he's been here, they haven't given up a 40-yard play. But yet, Baker Mayfield escapes the blitz, and all of a sudden, he loses a defender, and he's able to step up they hit a big play behind him. So those are type of things that you have to give credit to Baker Mayfield, but we're not used to seeing that on the defensive side of the ball because they've been making such good plays over the last few weeks.
When you look at the Browns offense, the weak link of the Browns offense is the offensive line. And I don't think that the Steelers did a good enough job of taking advantage of the matchup. You know, offensive line versus defensive front 7 to the degree that you really kind of needed to make up for some of the other deficiencies on I won't say your roster, but in terms of the kind of people you were able to put on the field last night. So, you know, the things that the Steelers were not able to do against the Browns offensive line kind of set the stage for Baker Mayfield to be able to buy some time, move around and make some of the plays against that.
In the way that this defense was playing, you knew they were trying to take the pressure away off of Baker Mayfield. They knew already we were going to turn around and turn that football and hand it off to the running back. 27 carries, 92 yards. So you knew they were committed to running the football to take the pressure off of Baker Mayfield. Unfortunately, those splash plays didn't come along with it.
And like you said, they did have a very focused effort on running the ball. But the biggest thing when you talk about this defense, in particular that front seven taking advantage of the offensive line, there were plays to be made there. We saw Jay Elliott. He had an opportunity against Baker. He jumps on the pump fake. Baker hits a dagger down the field. We saw multiple times where guys are in the backfield having a chance to make the play, but this is the week that they didn't. And unfortunately, that's what led to the lack of splash and ultimately keeping those guys extending drives. So the biggest thing is when you're in those situations, make the plays you're supposed to make. The big plays will happen, but you have to make the routine plays.
The offense's inability, too, to move the ball, score some points, also allowed the Browns to stay with their running game.
Yeah.
I mean, if you score some points and make the Browns, I don't know, maybe play behind a little bit, even if it's 3 points, they won't run the ball as much. And so if Baker Mayfield then if they're calling more pass plays, he's dropping into the pocket more often, you get more opportunities to rush him. He throws a lot of interceptions. You get more opportunities with the ball in the air. But, 14-0, they could play conservative on offense. They didn't have to take any chances.
All right, well, they will have a long week to prepare for the Cincinnati Bengals. A lot I think we'll talk about next week as they get ready for that next game. But thanks so much for joining us here today on the Steelers Roundtable. Have a great weekend. We'll see everybody next week.